Sean Payton?
Well, I think one of the reasons that Dennis Allis is a leader is because is the head coach now is because they want to keep some of that culture intact that has been in the Saints locker room since Sean Payton came. Was that back in 2006? And because he's been a part of that culture, he can keep that the same. And I think that's why that team will continue to be good over the years. And we got a little bit of a sample of it when Sean Payton was out with COVID. He stepped in and really took the lead, of that team in a time where things were crazy. We needed some wins, and that comes from his former experience as a head coach.
So, in thinking about that, because the one thing, I feel like the Saints have been slept on when it comes to defense.
Yeah.
For so long, you guys were so good at being able to lock it down, and we saw all the different players. What's the secret sauce? Why are you always so good?
Well, I think, Dennis Allen is a big part of that. He's one of the brightest defensive minds in this game with just some of the things that he's doing with some of the coverages in the secondary. And it's a talented defense. Last year you had myself, Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, C.J. Garner-Johnson, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis. All of these guys can play and match up with anybody. And so that's really the heart of that team right now is that defense, which is something different. That's new for the Saints. But they're going to lean heavily on that moving forward.
Look, I expect the Saints to be really good, but here's what we're going to do. I got a chance to bring over another Pro Bowler, and so now we're just going to load up the show full of Pro Bowlers. So I got you as a guy who has been decorated. I got my guy, Jerry Bird, who is also a former Pro Bowler. I'm not, but I'm going to get to play one today on TV. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to lean into it because we got a nice little segment playing on both of you guys. Birds of a feather. We're going to rank the top 5 secondaries in the league. I'm starting with you, Jerry. Who's number 5?
Let's do it. At number 5, we're going to start with the Bucks. I like what they're doing right here. The corner situation, Jamil Dean, I think they're going to come back and repeat. They have a strong offense, so I think the defense is going to be good. Their secondary, they've shown what they can do. Antoine Winfield back there. They got 2 good safeties, so I'm liking the Bucks.
Oh, look, I like the Bucks. Todd Bowles certainly does a great job. And I know Todd Bowles is from Jersey, so you're up next. Here we go at number 4.
Yeah, I think they finished last in the league in passing, so it can be a little odd, but I really like the Ravens, mainly because Marcus Peters was injured last year. If he comes back and is healthy, has the year that we know he can have, then adding Marcus, the safety that they just added to it, man, okay.
Marcus Williams.
Yeah, Marcus Williams. You add Marcus Williams to that equation, that's a young safety that's got a ton of range that's going to really, I think, bolster that secondary.
It'll be interesting because Wink Martindale is no longer the defensive coordinator. They're changed over to Mike Verdugo. We'll see if that changes how they approach it. 3, you're up.
3, I got the Cleveland Browns. I like what they do with Denzel Ward here. He's a scrappy corner. Ohio State.
Ohio
State like Malcolm. I like what they do there. I like Grant Delpit, too, at the safety. I think if he can return to form how we played at LSU, it'll be really good for their secondary as well.
Look, talented up front. I know it's a lot easier playing in the back end when you get guys that can hunt. Think about Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, being able to get up to passer. Should allow them to be better. 2.
I'm going to go with, I'm a homer, the Saints. I was just in this locker room last year, so I know this secondary, in and out. C.J. Garner-Johnson in the nickel, I think, is going to be the best nickel in the game. You got Marshawn Lattimore on one side, Paulson Adebo, and now adding Tyrann Mathieu to that secondary, replacing some of that leadership, and I think that's going to be a perfect fit for him.
Well, look, I know this. In looking at that secondary, there's a lot of communication, a lot of talking going on in the Saints back end. So we're going to finish with you at number 1. Who you got?
Number 1, I'm going with the Buffalo Bills. I think that they do a great job. They've had some chemistry built over these past few years. They've been consistent. Their 2 safeties are solid, rock stars back there. Then they got their corner, Tre'Davious White. Hopefully he comes back from his injury. They'll be solid. And they drafted Kyrie Elam, so they're pretty solid at the secondary. And then Leron Johnson, too, at that nickel position is really good, and he does a really good job in there to solidify him.
Yeah, I think they've been probably the most consistent secondary over the last few years, just constant production from this group. I think it'll continue this season.
Hey, man, y'all got to get rid of those homer cards. We can't let you go with the Saints and you go with the Buffalo Bills. Next time we...
In 100-plus degree weather, the Raiders held their first practice of training camp earlier today. After a blockbuster offseason, it's time to start seeing these pieces come together. Steve Weish is in Henderson, Nevada, with more on Silver and Black.
Well, as the NFL's first team to take the practice field in training camp, the Raiders kicked things off Thursday, and when practice ended at 10 a.m. local time, it was 100 degrees, hence the early start. Now, head coach Josh McDaniels said these non-padded workouts are really going to be refreshers of the work that the team did during the offseason. And the key thing they really need to knock down is the communication. That's the things they don't feel quite buttoned up. Now, speaking of pass rusher Max Crosby, he said, look, they've got a new coaching staff in here. There's a lot of new players in here. So from player to coach, coach to player to player, they've got to get a lot of things down. And of course, when they get pads on next week, that's when head coach Josh McDaniels said the competition really ramps up. One thing he said that was interesting is there's a lot of positions where there's competition for playing time. Now, he wasn't specific, but the offensive line, the secondary, and the interior defensive line, where there's going to be competition, where there's some openings where some players can actually earn spots in the rotation.
All right, thank you, Weish. Let's give you guys a closer look at that practice from earlier today. Now, if you guys remember, the leaders in this Raiders locker room, so we're talking Derek Carr, we're talking Max Crosby, they've been on the mic over the last couple of weeks, and they've sort of been giving an air of, you know, we got this chip on our shoulder, we're the underdogs. I don't know that I would qualify them as underdogs with all that they did this offseason, but Bucky, now we're starting to see, or we will get to see, how this team is really coming together under Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, look, this team can be dangerous under Josh McDaniels because I think he inherits a team, particularly on offense, that allows him to have the best of both worlds. You think about how the New England Patriots were able to play. They were always versatile and dynamic. They kind of operated using snowflake game plans, meaning each week they did something differently based on the opponent. So when I look at the personnel that he has in place, Darren Waller, dynamic tight end, Devontae Adams, maybe the best wide receiver in football. Hunter Renfrow, a slot machine, a guy who can get open. So now you have all those pieces of the puzzle on the outside that can win their own individual battles, and you have a power running game in place with Josh Jacobs. I think Josh McDaniels can really attack in a variety of ways. It makes the Raiders dangerous, and in a division where, look, you're locked and loaded when it comes to quarterback play, it really is an arms race. I think you have to put the Raiders right near the top of the list when it comes to the weapons and the quarterback that they have in place.
Bucky, you're absolutely right, man. They can play any game that a defense presents to them, right? You talked about that run game. I think just this has to be a huge year for Josh Jacobs, right? He showed that he can be one of the top runners in the National Football League, but at the end of the day, he has to stay healthy. And it has to be a couple of games this year where he just says, come on, guys, get on my back and carry this team to a few wins. And you talk about Darren Waller and Devontae Adams. Those are the two coverage dictators for this offense. They're going to literally split defenses in half, similar to what Kansas City was able to do with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. But I really think Hunter Renfrow is going to be the beneficiary of all of these weapons, this new offense, all of these things. He has great route running. He has great separation at the top of his routes, and he's a guy that's going to always be open as kind of that open window for Derek Carr. So, yeah, I like what I'm seeing out of the Las Vegas Raiders, and they're going to be right there at the end of this division to compete. Hopefully, we'll see if they can win it.
And everything you guys are talking about is great, but it all hinges on this offensive line.
Oh.
So I want to take a look at this offensive line. And
Talk about it, JB.
With Colton Miller, he's been an outstanding performer this last year. He was solid all throughout the year. Denzel Good is coming off an ACL injury, so we don't know what to expect from him. Then you have Alex Leatherwood, who's kind of a swing guy, so there's continuity that needs to be built within that offensive line, and that's all going to be important and paramount to the success of all the weapons you're talking about and keeping Derek Carr upright.
What did you call Colton Miller? The mainstay? The anchor there? I love hearing that because I remember when he was first drafted, I watched his transition going into the second year in the league where he had to put on 30 pounds. He said his parents couldn't keep up with how much food they had to buy in the house, but he really has evolved, as you mentioned, as the mainstay of that offensive line and a leader on that team. So I think if he can get the other guys, the younger ones that came out there like Leatherwood, to really fall in line and keep Derek as protected as possible, I think they could do some things. So this is one first look at our very first practice of training camp that we've seen thus far. But NFL Network is the place to be for coverage as teams across the league and training camp season kicks off. Join us Monday for the debut of Inside Training Camp Live as we begin our summer tour to cover the